Welcome to the Chief of Cybersecurity podcast, where we discuss relevant information surrounding protecting networks, devices, and data from unauthorized access or criminal use from hackers. Also, industry best practices and the cybersecurity workforce. Made possible by CMIS. Learn more at cmis.net. For a list of publications, visit DewayneHart.com.
All right, we're back at it. Rich Casanova here, Dewayne Hart. We're in the studio, the Global Podcast Studios here in Atlanta for another exciting episode of the Cybersecurity Mindset Podcast. And check this out. I can't believe we're in season 4, Dewayne. Is that possible? Yeah, a round of applause. Yeah, cue the applause. For this episode, we're going to be talking about how does the federal government modernize strategy and affect cybersecurity and why. So, Dewayne, ready, set, go. You're on.
All right. If you are a seasonal cybersecurity expert, and if you've been working around the federal government since the 1980s, you know that modernization is very important because the cybersecurity landscape changes, hackers change, and different systems are needed because the technology environment changes. So the government has to modernize. And modernization itself is something that is designed to optimize maybe services and also to bring on the best in the breed of tools.
Right.
Because software applications become old.
Yeah.
Software applications become out of date.
Right.
Because as I speak here now, there are some proprietary systems that were probably built back in the 1970s that the government have that they probably tried to modernize, but you can't modernize those systems because it was built on different type of software application and programming language,
right,
like Fortran, COBOL, or
right,
something like that, right? So you can't modernize those systems, but there are some systems that can be modernized. And, part of that modernization is to look at the current technologies like cloud, AI, zero trust, looking at data loss prevention, looking at automation. If you are a cybersecurity expert and if you have worked around the vulnerability management space, you understand how automation works. When you have the different tools and let's say you need to ingest data between different platforms such as Tenable and probably Brinker, then where you need to develop some AI, some APIs so that you can ingest that data. Because now what's happening is that through this modernization effect, we're trying to integrate data and to centralize that data.
right.
So we have to have these effective processes in place and these tools to get us there. But the government is a driver of cybersecurity, and the government wants to be on board. The government started to modernize their systems over about 70 years ago.
Really?
Yes, because the driven effect was that the cybersecurity landscape would change. Hackers was getting more and more sophisticated in their tactics. So it's kind of like if you have a race, okay?
Right.
Hackers in lane A, let's say the federal government is in lane B.
Right.
Right? And the government realized that the hackers about ready to beat them to the finish line. And, the hackers always beating them to the finish line.
Right.
So the federal government said, okay, I need to figure out what to do so I can beat him to the finish line. So they realized that they've been wearing some worn out running shoes for the past 10 years. So they buy some brand new shoes with some great cushion, get on the track, and guess what? The hackers left behind. The government is crossed the finish line, sitting there waiting. Okay.
Because they also, let me see if I can connect part of the dots here, is that in that scenario, that analogy, the government didn't train the new breed of athletes, right? So the athletes were still running the same mindset with the worn out shoes. I mean, it's what you've talked about, technology and innovation or modernization. It's like trying to surf the internet on your fax machine.
Well,
that's outdated technology.
Well, part of that modernization effect is to train the workforce because as the tools are changing, the label categories have to change.
Right.
And also, too, the labor market changes a lot because we need to have newer skills because the technologies have to match the workforce.
Right.
All right. So because hackers are getting smarter and they are getting very sophisticated in their tactics. Because this whole entire cybersecurity industry is about one thing, right? Let's make sure that we stay protected and that we don't become a soft target for hackers. That's the main threat.
Right.
All right. You got to protect your enterprises.
100%. And speaking of enterprises, so, part of the topic that's included today is this, the situation of business transformation versus digital modernization. What do you mean by that reference?
Well,
how would you define that? Or what are some of the implications of that?
When we think about the improvement process for like IT and technology,
right?
We're going to see it's kind of two different folds. We go to the business transformation side.
Right.
It transformed the way we do business, looking at an improvement process, maybe the approach and the way that we were managing certain programs, looking at your customer relationship model.
Yep.
Maybe you're not attracting your customers like you want to. So you have to look at the way you use IT and use technology. Now, if you probably, let's say, for instance, if you gain information and you move to a certain point where you realize that the technologies is failing you, this is where digital modernization comes to surface now, because you need to have brand new applications and tools in place. As we look at the industry now with AI, looking at zero trust, looking at other type of initiatives that are fastly growing, such as cloud, business transformation state, we are failing our customers because the technologies have failed us. So in essence, business transformation is a business improvement process. How can you improve things for the business?
Right.
When you look at digital modernization, it's a technical change or it's an improvement in your technologies and bringing on new applications and tools that will support the environment.
So what I'm hearing you saying, because you reference customers, which, a lot of our listeners are, business professionals. And in that case, they're always trying that challenge of acquiring new customers and also keeping them happy and so forth, the repeat customers. So I think of in terms of like, if you're using old technology, if you are still today on your phone making outbound phone calls to a landline versus your competitor that's able to reach millions of prospects with a simple click of a mouse, right? So that's where maybe you transform your business. So maybe your value proposition is current and up to date. So you've brought on some new talent. But if you're using old technology, the telephone and a dial-up versus your competitors, they've not only recruited higher talent, but they've also upped their game in the digital space.
Well,
yes? Is that good?
Yes. That is a segment out of chapter 17 of the cybersecurity mindset that talks about something that government contractors face, is that a lot of government contractors face the challenge of trying to find out what capabilities do they need to serve the government, because the government is going through a modernization phase where they want to have the best tools and technologies. So as a federal contracting company, you always have to look at your capabilities and say, I can perform these 6 or 7 capabilities for the government. But you know what? The government requires 10. So I need to get the experience so I can have all 10 capabilities, because I want to be seen as a high value asset to the government.
Right.
Because I want to be able to do work for the government and be that single source, right? And to be that single source. So when we look at digital modernization, there are, I would say, a lot of interfaces that actually comes into digital modernization, because we already talked about the workforce, we talked about federal contracting, so we talk about the different tools and the different technologies that we have in place, but also too, see, we have to look at the investment strategy too.
Okay.
Because it takes money.
Right.
So
That's your digital modernization, right? That just doesn't, happen for free.
Right. Because see, the government has a budget, right? A budget built for modernization. But at the same time, I think that a lot of agencies are probably have to go through a year and kind of do their research and figure out, okay, where is it that I need to modernize?
Right.
Okay. And a lot of modernization is based on the cybersecurity threats that are out there.
Yeah.
Looking at hackers, all right? Because if one of the agencies have been susceptible to many attacks, let's say if there's an agency out there, right?
Right.
And if they're failing, then, the root cause analysis may just come up and say that, this software tool, it's not helping you out.
Yeah, it could even be a detriment to what your end goal is.
Right, yeah. Right. Because the other effect too is that maybe the organization realized that they have a lot of cybersecurity blind spots. Because those blind spots are those areas that you're not monitoring, that you don't know about because your tools are failing you. So guess what? You need to modernize now.
And speaking of modernizing, so you referenced chapter 17, the book talks about that. Also, I recall previous podcast specifically on this topic. And that was actually season 1, way back in season 1, right, way back in the day, episode 9 that actually was. We're going to segue in a second. I'm going to ask you to reference and do a little deep dive or conversation about a recent Forbes article you wrote talking about discovering how to transform cyber risk into rewards. And before you talk about that, I just want to again remind our listeners, you're listening to Dewayne Hart, the subject matter expert, all things cybersecurity. He runs an entity, enterprise, public speaker, author. I don't know what else you could add to your portfolio, a podcast. Maybe you're going to start creating some sculptures or some art or painting about cybersecurity. But let's talk about this. And again, all that information you can find at, including the YouTube channel, his book and so forth is all at DewayneHart.com. Let's talk about this recent Forbes article now.
Well, I like to look at it and state that if you don't know what's in your enterprise, then you're setting yourself up for failure. When I speak about cybersecurity blind spots, I'm talking about those areas that have not been treated, those areas on an enterprise where, you may have some data leakage, right, but you don't know about the data leakage. Hackers may have known about those open door policies that you have. I call it an open door policy because it's kind of like a gateway.
Right.
Open up. And let's say, for instance, access is wide open, right?
Yeah.
And hackers may have been monitoring that location for a while. And so what happens is that it is able to occur with the cybersecurity blind spots because maybe the organization have tools that are deficient, and these tools are not giving them actionable data where, they can identify these blind spots. So when you modernize your enterprise, these are the things that are being thought of. How many vulnerabilities are on my enterprise throughout the entire year? Am I really mitigating those vulnerabilities? How many times have I had incidents over these couple of years? Taking a look at your cyber resilience program, all right? When you probably had a technical issue, did you have redundancy in place? Right. And speaking of redundancy, I was looking online a couple of days ago, and I noticed that CISA, where they will do the review for organizations and to let them know how their cyber resilience program operate.
We're going to segue into another Forbes article, which is, but before we do that, just when you mentioned this open door policy, I think that's great for relationship building and an organization. But sometimes there warrants having a closed door, a private conversation, right? And that's that balancing act that you're playing within your organization, your team, even family relationships, but in this case with IT. There's places where, you want an open access platform. So you have shared, you can be the productivity can go up with that. That's where innovation comes from. There's certain things that you mentioned earlier, and I think in our previous episode about the government maintaining the data in terms of Social Security. The operative word there is security.
Yes.
Right? So let's talk about another article on Forbes that you recently wrote, talking about the 18 factors and metrics to show the value of cybersecurity initiatives. We don't have time for all 18. If you want to check those out, go to DewayneHart.com. You can read the whole article. I selected 4 of these. I'd be interested to hear a little bit more, not deeper dive, but just general idea of these 4. And then if you want to add to them, that's fine. The first one on my list is inputs, incidents, weakness, and legacy systems, right? So talk to us about that, subject matter.
Yes. So when we have incidents, such as an intrusion, see, it's going to show up as weaknesses, and also too, it could be a result of legacy systems. So when you can capture that data throughout the year,
right,
and if all of that become your actual metrics, right, then you can decide at the end of the year how you need to innovate.
Right.
And also, too, what type of funding do you need?
Yeah.
Because each federal agencies have a budget, but, depending on how the cybersecurity architect is operating and some of the needs of the organization, it could either shift your budget to the left or the right. But you need justification.
Yeah.
So accurate tracking throughout the year will actually help. And I think that part of that process is that you don't have to make it very challenging,
right,
because you have tools like AI now,
right,
that can help you figure out exactly where you stand
in a nanosecond. Yeah.
Yes.
And before you go to the next point is that reminds me. It seems like we had a previous episode about the weakest link in the organization or in your cybersecurity. But guess what number 2 is on my list?
Cybersecurity mindset chapter, transformational thinking. All right, there are 3 major sections out of the cybersecurity mindset, and although there are 20 chapters, well, the first area is talking about the cybersecurity culture. Okay, then we actually move into transformational thinking, and transformational thinking is stating that every organization has to transform, and you go and transform based on several factors. You could go and transform based on things like hackers, because you've been going through the process of having to deal with all the attacks all year long. But part of the transformational thinking too is to go and look into some of the other things that I spoke about, is that value proposition mentality, and actually trying to become that high value asset, which is what some of the federal contracting companies try to achieve. Right. Some of those other areas too is just focusing and just thinking about, okay, if I want to transform,
right, what
are some of the areas I need to privately investigate? We already spoke about the workforce.
Right.
We already spoke about some of the other things like the value proposition mentality. But to get there, you need to have a hacker's mindset, right, and wear that hacker's hat. Because if you think like a hacker does, then you will always beat them to the finish line.
And you mentioned previously about, if you're a government contractor, in essence, how are you going to be have that competitive edge? And that's exactly what you're referencing there. My third item, and you can maybe have some other off the list as your 18 or 19 points here, but my third item we talked about in multiple times in other episodes, situational awareness. But what's the tie into that and environmental knowledge?
Okay, when we look at situational awareness for the government, it's just having that environmental knowledge and knowing exactly the state of an agency enterprise. This is kind of goes into cyber visibility.
Okay.
And in knowing exactly, the state of systems and applications. Where are you most, how could I say, weaknesses? Vulnerables.
And also where are you, what are you world class at?
Yes. What are you good at? What are your capabilities? Where are you weak? How can you maintain cyber resilience?
Yeah.
These are very and very and very important. In fact, I also want to let the audience know that CISA stands for Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency.
Okay.
Previously, I stated Cybersecurity Information Security Agency.
Right.
So I just want to make sure I change that for the audience so that they know that this is what CISA means, because CISA is that component that is under DHS that does a lot of cybersecurity work. Pretty much drives cybersecurity.
You dropped another acronym there. You dropped another one, DHS.
Yes.
What is that?
Department of Homeland Security.
Okay.
I got that one right. So that's the goal of CISA, is to be the chief driver for cybersecurity for the nation. So that's what CISA does. But on the same note, when we look at the art of situation awareness, then we're just trying to make sure that we understand our environments and we understand the state of those environments. And when you understand the state of those environments, such as the federal government agencies, then you know where you need to modernize. Things such as cybersecurity blind spots, you have control of those. When you think about cyber visibility and trying to look at innovation, trying to look into your return on investment and looking at your budget and looking at those areas, those are going to help you modernize. But also, too, I want to bring up that part of modernization and looking at cyber visibility is knowing about certain programs. Your asset management, your configuration management, and your vulnerability management programs have to be known, because those are going to let you know what your weaknesses are and how vulnerable your enterprise may be. And if you understand those, then you can figure out your weaknesses and you can decide, we have the capabilities now to take care of this, or we need to modernize so that we can reduce these threats on the enterprise.
Well said, sir. So Rich Casanova here on behalf of the Chief of Cybersecurity, Dewayne Hart. We're going to wrap things up here. I want you to, if you would, please give us a quick maybe summary as we close out, also a call to action. And then finally, what's next? Keep us on that. What's a cliffhanger? Keep us on the edge of the seat. What are we looking for coming up? I'm sorry, real quick before I do that, so again, remind our listeners, check out the podcast, the book, the Forbes article, all that good stuff at DewayneHart.com. And Dewayne, again, summary, call to action, and what's next?
Audience, this podcast could have went for 3 hours, but if you go to my YouTube channel, there's enormous amount of information that can help you understand digital modernization and also the Forbes articles. But also, too, I want to make note of that going into next month, we're going to focus on the healthcare sector, because it's very important to talk about that sector. But I wanted to start January 2024 off with the federal government. So go through the podcast, go through the reading, and let's get together and talk about the healthcare sector for next month.
You've been listening to the Chief of Cybersecurity podcast, where we hope you've gained knowledge to improve your cybersecurity mindset. Visit DewayneHart.com to learn more about publications, show notes, and more information on cybersecurity.